So I was supposed to do this yesterday, but I postponed it about a day later because I didn't want to do this either during the halftime break between those two CCL game or between the end of the first CCL game and to the beginning of the second CCL game. So that's why I decided to wait till tonight, because tonight there's only one game, and that game was just over a couple of minutes ago between the Red Bulls versus Atletico Pinteja, which, spoiler alert, the Red Bulls actually won. But either way, let's actually now talk about the biggest problem each MLS team is facing heading into this new season, and this, of course, is the Eastern Conference version. If you're looking for the Western Conference version, I already did that on Monday, and I'll leave a link in the description below, and also you can wait till the end of this video where there's going to be an end screen, and that video will be popped up in the top left, or actually not the top left, but the bottom left side of the screen. But either way, let's start with Atlanta, and as I said with the Western Conference, I'm going to go alphabetical order, and we're going to start with the defending champion, Atlanta United. And for Atlanta, they don't really had a lot of problem to deal with, and this is where it kind of got a little bit hard when I have to come up with a problem with some of these very good teams. But one big problem I think Atlanta will definitely face is going to be dealing with Ezekiel Barco. And I usually do not like to single out a single player in the biggest problem each team has faced, but in this case, I just had to do it because, for Barco, he's got to perform this year. Like last year, he was clearly not worth the $15 million that Atlanta paid for him. He started the year injured, and then he had some disciplinary issue off the field, which led him to be benched, and for majority of the year, he did not really get any starting minutes with this team. And for a guy that is your DP, and for a guy that you pay $15 million for, that shouldn't be a guy that should be sitting on the bench and not really making a big impact to your team. So for Barco, this is a huge year for them, and if he does not perform again this year, what do you do if you're Atlanta? Because he is eating up so much of your salary cap. I think he's like last year he was the second highest player behind Almiron, and I think he still is the second highest player because Petty Martinez came into this team, and I think now he is the highest paid player on that team. So what do you do with Barco? Like, if he does not perform, you got to either maybe send him back to Argentina on loan or just sold him. And if you're going to sold him, it's not going to be to a European club. It might be to a team back in South America. And I doubt that any team in MLS would really want to get Ezekiel Barco. I mean, imagine if a team in MLS is going to try to get Ezekiel Barco, if Atlanta let him go, it is going to be a huge amount of money that they're going to have to pay for Barco. So that's really probably the biggest problem that they have to face heading into this season. For the Chicago Fire, their backline and depth. I've been saying how this Fire backline is just, not only there's no depth on this backline, but there isn't really a backline for this team. I mean, besides Kappenhoff, who else is there in the backline? I mean, they do not have full backs in this team. They don't really have some decent center backs in this team. So I am really concerned heading into this season. And the fact that they did not do anything in the offseason to address this issue makes me really, really concerned. I mean, I get that, going forward, they definitely look decent on the attack, and also the midfield is started to shape a little bit better. But if you don't have a back line and you do not have anybody playing the center back role, are you going to once again put Schweinsteiger back into that center back role? And look what happened when you did that last season. It didn't go so well. So I'm really concerned about Chicago in terms of that back line, and this team could give up a ton of goals. That if they give up a ton of goals, I don't think they have enough to kind of make up for that in order to maybe win some games. For FC Cincinnati, well, it's kind of the complete opposite of the Chicago Fire in terms of their biggest problem. With the Fire, it's the back line. For FC Cincinnati, it's the goal scoring and the attack. And I've been saying it also throughout this offseason of how they don't really have any, like, they have Fernando Audi, who's definitely going to score them the goals, but who else is there to potentially score those goals for you? And I just have a feeling when you look at this team and the way that Alan Koch is setting up for this team, it looks like this is going to be a very kind of counter-attacking and kind of a low block team, which, we'll see if this is going to be very successful. If they are going to be successful and if they do a good job in terms of defending and hit team on the counter attack, then maybe that will work very well. And also, if they can really be good on those set pieces, and they definitely have a couple of big weapons to basically put those set piece away. One guy comes into mind is Kendall Waston, who is probably one of the deadliest set piece kind of goal scored in the league. So, set piece and certainly maybe a lot of Fernando Audi goal scoring ability is probably going to be something that Cincinnati is going to rely on, which I think that's clearly not enough in terms of getting them even close to what LAFC and Atlanta did in their expansion year. For the Columbus Crew, it's dealing with the post-Berhalter era. So this is going to be interesting with Caleb Porter's coming in. I talked about how I feel like Porter should just stick with what Berhalter is doing. I know that he's trying to do something that Berhalter is something that it's completely against what Berhalter is doing. But I think with the way that this team is and with the way that this is still kind of a Berhalter type of team, he needs to just stick with that kind of tactics, and that before he really kind of want to bring in his own philosophy and his own tactics, he does not have the players that he wants to build on, then it's just not going to work. So, yeah, we'll see how they deal with it, and certainly I think another thing I will add into that is goal scoring. Jerzy Zardes, he scored tons of goal last season. There's no guarantee that he can do that again, and yeah, and last season they didn't really score a lot of goals too. Like, I think they scored only 42 or 43 goals, and the only reason why they were in the playoffs is because they had one of the best defense in the league. And I even would say that, what are they going to do with the goalkeeper position once Zach Steffen leaves? Because although Steffen is still with this team, he's going to be leaving in July. So who is going to replace Zach Steffen, and who is going to replace him in that goalkeeper position? But moving on, DC. So will Lucho Acosta performance might go down after a failed PSG move? And again, I don't like to single out a single player, but for DC, that is a really big concern because, whenever I said before how whenever you see a player decide to join a big club and then only to find out that at the very last minute his move got rejected, it's going to be tough to trying to go back to your old team and just try to, earn that trust from your teammate. Because I'm pretty sure everybody and in the DC United organization and all the players are probably not happy with what Acosta did this offseason, trying to force a move. And yeah, it's going to be tough for him to try to... And last year, he pretty much played to what we kind of expect what Lucho Acosta should be. I mean, for many years, Acosta has kind of didn't really live up to the expectation and his potential until last season. The question is, can he do it again this season? So, moving on, Montreal. Too much relying on Piatti. Now, again, as I said before, I don't want to just single out a single player, but for Montreal, it's pretty clear that this is a really big problem for them. And, hopefully Maxi Urruti can maybe push some pressure off of Piatti in terms of the goal scoring department, but, Montreal eventually they got to start working a way where Piatti is not going to be always the guy that is going to basically carry this team, because you know you're not going to have him next year, and the clock is definitely ticking in terms of first finding a replacement for Piatti, and two, trying to find a way where you don't really need to just heavily rely on Piatti. Because if Piatti goes, and if this team lose Piatti, this team is going to go straight down the hill and just fall off the map. I guarantee you that. Moving on, New England. Getting over the playoff line and also probably goal scoring. So, despite the fact that New England did sign an attacker, they did sign. They're probably the most ambitious signing that they have ever done in club history by signing Carlos Gil. I don't know if it's still going to be enough in terms of the goal scoring department. I mean, I know last season New England didn't really have a lot of trouble with that, but that was because guys like Pineda, Bunbury, and even Fagundes was just playing out of their mind. And the first half, you saw it clearly where those guys were just playing out of their mind. That it was just a huge surprise of how well they were performing. And I said throughout last season, New England was just, they were clearly overachieving. This is definitely didn't it wasn't something I was expected from them. And reality kind of really hits this team in the second half this season, where, yeah, that's kind of the New England that we thought it would happen, and they, of course, missed the playoffs. And the playoffs has always been, for the last 3 years, New England has just gone so close from making the playoffs. You know, back in 2016, I think they finished 7th in the standings, which, you know, I think they finished 6 or 7, but they just finished below the red line. And then it was the same thing in 2017. And it was kind of the same thing again in 2018, although I think in 2018 they finished 8th, and I believe Montreal finished 7th. But New England was kind of in that conversation of making the playoffs, even heading into the final week. So this team have come so close every single year for the past 3 years. Is that, can they actually finally get over that hump? And the answer to that question is probably no, because, you know, I'm still concerned about the attack, and, you know, whether or not if these guys that just clearly overachieved last year in terms of goal scoring will once again produce this year. For NYCFC, well, it's dealing with the post via air and just hope that Matrida is actually the answer. I mean, it's clear that when they got Matrida, this is a really high risk and high reward kind of scenario where, you know, Matrida's got to do something at least somewhat close to David Villa. I mean, I don't expect him to do what David Villa does, because, like I said many times before, David Villa is one of those players that is just, it's a generation talent, and it's somebody that you just cannot replace with just one signing. So we'll see if Matrida can actually do that. But, you know, I think the other big issue for them is that Dome Turin, you know, the philosophy that he is setting this team, the tactics that he's using with this team, yeah, he better do it he better make sure that whatever his philosophy and his tactics on this team actually works well. Because if this is a Dome Turin team in the second half of the season and it shifts over into this season, I have a feeling he's not going to last very long, and that NYCFC, who has a lot of talent on their team. I mean, even without Villa, I think they still have one of the most talented team in MLS. If he cannot get that team even over the playoff line and get to the playoffs with that kind of a squad, then yeah, it's clear that he probably have to go. But moving on, and also this is why I should never use green again, because, you know, the glare is kind of like transparent the green kind of color, and next time I'll probably just use blue. But this is actually the Union, and the biggest problem for them is the new press system. It's a high risk and high rewards situation. You know, they're switching to a press this season, and we don't know exactly how well it would work. Now, if the press actually works, then I think this team could be one of the best team in the Eastern Conference and maybe could actually make top four and even get as high as third place in this Eastern Conference. Because from what I know right now with the Eastern Conference, it's pretty much just two teams and everybody else. It's Atlanta United and the Red Bulls that is probably going to be the top two team. And then it's just everybody else fighting for those five remaining spots in the Eastern Conference. And if Philly can get that press system work, and if Marco Fabian will just be like what he was a couple of years ago, then this team could be one of the best team in the Eastern Conference. If not, this team could definitely make the playoffs. So there is just such a unpredictability and just such a huge gap between how the Union could be. On one hand, the Union could be good, and on the other, they could absolutely suck this year. And I guarantee you that if they start to suck and this press system does not work, you know that Jim Curtin is going to get a huge amount of backlash. I mean, Jim Curtin last season, even with him putting the Union to the U.S. Open Cup final and even getting that team to the playoffs, he was still receiving criticism. So I can't imagine if he does not get this press system work out with this team. I can't imagine how is he going to really stay with that team. And that Ernest Tanner, he is not the previous GM Ernie Stewart's, where he is a Jim Curtin guy, and he won't be hesitate to basically put on the chopping block on Jim Curtin if he thinks that he's not doing very well with the Union and with this press system. For Orlando City, well, just like the San Jose Earthquakes, it's pretty much everything. Now, I know they brought in Nani, and I know that, this is kind of just an MLS 1.0 kind of signing, and a signing that kind of tried to please the fans and kind of want to make the fans believe that this team can go anywhere. But let's be honest, Orlando City is still a big mess. And, the funny thing is, tonight, when they actually play against New England, they actually scored 6 goals against New England, and they beat them 6-2. Now, unfortunately, that is the preseason, and this is why I don't really talk about preseason, and I really don't look at preseason as a way to really define what's going to happen in the upcoming season, because usually in preseason, it's a time where you're not playing a squad that is 100% up to fitness, and that they're going to definitely look very sluggish, and you're trying to experiment in terms of formation and see which one will actually work out heading into the season. So maybe New England actually just put their B team, and maybe New England just decided, or Brett Friedel decided to choose his system and see if it actually worked out for the team. And yeah, it's hard to see if that 6-2 victory by Orlando City is something to come for the season, or it's just because of preseason. And this goes the same with what happened with the Quakes not a couple of weeks ago, but last week when they play against LAFC, where they won 3-0. Yes, on one hand, I'm happy the Quakes finally win a game, and the fact that they kind of turn around after getting embarrassed by the same scoreline the previous week against Reno 1868. But the problem is, it's the preseason, and you don't know exactly, one thing I know is that in that LAFC game, they did kind of put the starters in the first half, and we absolutely just bossed their starters. But still, probably their starters are not 100% up to speed, and, and we don't know if Bob Bradley decided to kind of tingle with the tactics and see how it goes. That's what preseason is for. So I really think that for people that say that, look at preseason and think that, oh, that's what's going to happen with the team, and that they're going to absolutely dominate in the regular season because they won all their preseason games, yeah, that doesn't usually work. Now, that doesn't mean that if you lose all your preseason game heading into the season that you shouldn't be worried. You don't have to, just worry about how this upcoming season would go. There will definitely be some worry. And as I get to the next team, I, of course, will talk about that. But For Orlando City, I still think that they have so much problem with that team. It starts with the goalkeeper where it looks like they're going to put Joe Bendik in again, and I have no clue why did they not even think about replacing Joe Bendik. I mean, Bendik was really bad last season, and some will say that he was bad because of the back line that is bad, which is in some way true because that back line didn't help him most of the time, but in general, he was just bad. Okay, and that back line, for Orlando City still looks the same, and unless if the guys that they have signed, and unless if Nani just carried them like what maybe Kaká does, although Kaká didn't try to carry this team, but didn't get them to the playoffs. So Nani's gonna have to do something even Kaká didn't do, and unless if maybe Sasha Kleshin or even Coman or even Rosell can finally do what Orlando City think that they were going to do when they acquired them about in the last off season, I don't think this team is gonna do very well heading into this upcoming season. Which now brings us to Toronto FC, and I put defense with all caps, and I put 3 exclamation mark, and I even put like 2 underline through there. And this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler to what I'm going to say tomorrow in the review of CCL, because we know what happened last night, and it was an absolute embarrassment. But I'm not really going to get to that in this video, but instead I'm going to talk about that in tomorrow's video. And really, their defense, it is just something that I am really concerned about this team. Now, they did try to get Simon in the off season, and from what we saw last night, it clearly didn't make any difference. And I know right now TFC is going through a rebuilding year where they're trying to deal with the post-Javinko era and trying to maybe start thinking about signing a couple of guys as a foundation of the rebuild, which I think that's one thing that, I said that this team is on a rebuild, but one thing I'm a little bit concerned is that in order for this team to get the rebuild start, they need players. They need some foundation kind of player, which they still haven't really got. Now, they are, of course, looking at that guy that currently plays for Genk, and I forgot what was his name. I think it's Pizzillo. That was the guy that they were looking for. And if I absolutely butcher his name, I do apologize that. And once they get him, yeah, that would be a good foundation in terms of starting your rebuilding. That could be a good replacement for Victor Vasquez. But until when they start to get some signings and replace the core that they basically sold off this offseason, this rebuilding is going nowhere. They're going to be stuck in rebuilding forever if they don't think about replacing those guys. But yeah, the defense, it's a huge issue coming into this upcoming season. And if it's something like what we saw last night, this is going to be a long season for TFC. And then finally, the Red Bulls. And I know I said alphabetical order, but when I finished doing this, I literally forgot to put the Red Bulls next to NYCFC, so that's why they're last. But really, for the Red Bulls, it's just getting over the hump in the playoffs as the biggest problem that they're facing. I mean, you could say that how are they going to replace Tyler Adams? And to my answer, I think they will still find a way to do that. They definitely will have someone in their academy or even have players to get ready to step up and fill in that spot. This Red Bull team is a very deep team, and even if they sold off their best player, I think they'll always have a replacement for that player, either from their current squad or from the academy that they have. So yeah, but either way, that is pretty much it for the Eastern Conference. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this? I know this video kind of got a little bit longer when I start talking about preseason and that whole shenanigans. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing the review of CCL, so make sure you guys check that out. And yeah, hope to see you guys next time.